Chun's fingers tightened on the edge of his command console. On the main screen, the angry red dots of the Concordance fleet formed a perfect ring just beyond the orbit of Jupiter. They were so many. His own ship, the Guardian, floated in a thin defensive line with the rest of Earth's last fleet. The ships looked small and fragile against the star-flecked black. Any change in their formation? Chun's voice was calm. He worked hard to keep it that way. At the communication station, Suman shook her head. Her face was pale under the blue glow of her screens. No, Captain. They're holding position. But energy signatures from their lead vessels are spiking. They're powering primary weapons. A dull ache settled behind Chun's eyes. It had been 6 months since the first contact. 6 months of desperate talks, of offering every concession, of showing the aliens, the Galactic Concordance, their history, their art, their hopes for peace. The Concordance had listened with cold, unblinking eyes. They saw not a people, but a problem. Humanity's leap to warp drive had been too fast, too unregulated. They called humans chaos bringers, a primitive species playing with forces they couldn't control. The only order, they said, was surrender or removal. Mars had fallen in a week. The settlements there were not military. They were families, scientists, farmers. The last transmission from the Red Planet had been a blur of smoke and static. Chun had watched it on this very bridge, feeling something harden inside him. Captain, a soft voice came from the rear station. It was Hyan, the tactical officer. His usual playful smirk was gone. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Encrypted, highest level. Put it through to my panel, Chun said. He turned to his private screen. The face of Admiral Mira appeared. Her office in the Sol bunker was stark, all gray metal and sharp light. She looked older than she had just a month ago. Captain John, she began, her voice crisp. The final diplomatic channel is closed. The Concordance envoy, Kale, has rejected the last proposal. They have issued their final ultimatum. Total disarmament and submission to Concordance governance within 6 hours, or they will begin planetary bombardment. The words hung in the recycled air of the bridge. Chun felt the eyes of his crew on his back. He was their captain. He had to be the stone. Our orders, Admiral? Myra's gaze was unwavering. You are to hold the line at Earth's orbit. You will engage any vessel that crosses the agreed boundary. But you are not to fire first. Is that clear? It is clear, Chun said, but it felt like a death sentence. The Guardian and the 19 other ships with them were brave, but they were like pebbles against a tidal wave. There is one more directive, Mira continued, her tone dropping, becoming almost confidential. A protocol has been uploaded to your ship's secure database and to every remaining EDF vessel. It is called Final Broadcast. Your ship, Captain, is to be the trigger. When the last major orbital defense falls, you are to activate it. Not a moment before. Do you understand? Chun's throat was dry. The nature of the protocol, Admiral? You will see when the time comes. It is not a weapon. It is a message. Our final one. Your duty is to ensure it is sent. That is all. Hold the line, Captain. Earth endures. The screen went dark. Chun sat back, the weight of the unsaid pressing on him. A final broadcast. A last shout into the dark. Captain? Suman's voice was quiet. We're being hailed. By the Concordance flagship? Its envoy, Kale. Chun took a slow breath. On screen, the view of the stars vanished, replaced by the alien. Kale was humanoid, but taller, with skin the color of polished silver and large, completely black eyes. His face showed no emotion humans could recognize. Captain John of the vessel Guardian, Kale's voice was translated by the computer, smooth and devoid of inflection. You have received our terms. Your time is now 5 hours, 59 minutes. You will order your pitiful fleet to stand down and withdraw. Envoy Kale, Jun said, keeping his voice level. There is still room for dialogue. We have offered to submit our technology for review, to accept a probationary status. We do not want war. Your offers are irrelevant, Kale stated. Your species' rapid technological ascent is a statistical anomaly. It creates instability. The galactic concordance has maintained peace for 10,000 cycles by removing instability. You are a fire in a dry forest. You must be put out. This is not a negotiation. It is a fact. We are not a fire, Jun said, a flicker of anger breaking through his control. We are people. We have children down there. We have a history, a future. A short history. And no future, Kale replied. You have 5 hours, 58 minutes. Do not waste them with sentiment. It is a trait of your primitive biology. We suggest silence and acceptance. The transmission cut. The screen returned to the view of space and the waiting wall of enemy ships. Silence filled the bridge. It was Sumin who broke it. They really don't see us at all, do they? No, Jun said softly. They see a problem to be solved. We are not people to them. Hours ticked by. The tension on the bridge was a physical thing. Jun watched the tactical display. The Concordance fleet began to move. Not a rush, but a slow, deliberate advance, like a hand closing into a fist. They crossed the orbit of Saturn. Then the asteroid belt. Captain, they're accelerating, Hyan said, his voice tense. Battle stations, Jun said, the order calm. Alarms hummed gently, lights shifting to a muted red. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, strapping in. Powering up defensive grids, the Concordance Armada filled the screen now, a majestic and terrifying forest of sleek, angular ships, each one larger than the Guardian. They ignored the last fleet, heading straight for the blue-green jewel of Earth. They're targeting the orbital defense platforms, Sumin reported, her voice shaking. One by one, the icons representing Earth's last line of automated defenses winked out. There was no drama to it on the screen, just silent, digital death. Each vanishing light meant thousands of tons of metal shattered. Humans inside snuffed out in an instant. Chun's console chimed. A new message, flagged from Earth Command. It was 2 words. Final protocol authorized. Hold position. He opened the secure file. Schematics, energy graphs, and a single activation sequence filled his screen. He understood now. Project Echo. It used the planetary energy grid, the core taps, everything. It would send a pulse, a data burst of unimaginable power, carrying everything. A history. A testament. It would drain Earth's core to do it. It was not a weapon. It was a tombstone with a message carved on it. Sumin, he said, I am transferring primary protocol control to your station. On my mark, you will initiate the sequence. She looked at him, her eyes wide with understanding and horror. She nodded, unable to speak. Outside, the first Concordance capital ships breached high orbit. Brilliant lances of energy stabbed down, striking the great shipyards over the Pacific. Silent, blooming flowers of fire erupted against the backdrop of the planet. The Guardian trembled as a shockwave from a nearby detonation rattled its hull. They are turning toward us, Hyan said, on the screen. A group of smaller, faster Concordance vessels peeled off from the main force. Their weapons glowed. They had cleared the path. Now they would sweep away the last pebbles. Chun looked at Earth, half in daylight, half in night. He thought of the streets of Seoul, of the mountains, the oceans. He thought of the noise, the laughter, the quiet moments. All of it about to be gone. He opened a channel to the last fleet. All ships, he said, his voice echoing in the silence of his own bridge. This is Captain Jun of the Guardian. Our orders are to hold. We are the shield. We stand here so that Earth's voice can be heard one last time. It has been an honor. He closed the channel and turned to Suman. Her hand was poised over the glowing initiation panel. The alien ships were almost in firing range. For Earth, Jun whispered. The air in the bunker was cool, contasted of recycled metal and fear. The room was called the Situation Chamber, a vast space carved deep beneath the mountains outside Seoul. Screens covered the walls, each showing a different kind of disaster. One displayed the silent, tragic ballet of Earth's last fleet holding position against a swarm of alien ships. Another showed the fiery impacts of orbital strikes on the great coastal cities. The sound was off. The silence of the destruction was worse than any noise. President Mira stood at the center of it all, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. She watched a screen where a city she thought was Sydney vanished under a cloud of dust and plasma. She did not flinch. To flinch was to break, and she could not break yet. To her right, Admiral Hyen stood ramrod straight, his face a stone mask. His career, his life, had been about defense. Now he was watching the undoing of everything. The fleet is engaged, Hyen said, his voice rough. The Guardian confirms. They are the last relay for the protocol. Myra simply nodded. Her mind was a strange, clear place. The grief was there, a vast and terrible ocean, but she stood on a small island of duty. She had one last thing to do. Bring in Ji-hoon, she said. A side door hissed open. A man walked in, looking out of place. He was not a soldier or a politician. He was Dr. Kim Ji-hoon, and he wore a wrinkled lab coat over a simple sweater. He carried a data tablet like it was a sacred text. His eyes were red-rimmed behind his glasses, but they were fierce. Madam President, Ji-hoon said, bowing his head slightly. Doctor, explain it to everyone. One last time. No technical terms. A child should understand. Myra's voice was soft, but it carried across the quiet room. The other council members, the last leaders of continents that were now burning, turned to listen. Ji-hoon took a deep breath. He tapped his tablet, and a holographic image of Earth appeared in the middle of the room. It was beautiful, swirling with white clouds and blue oceans. For years, Ji-hoon began. We worked on a project called Echo. The Concordance feared our warp drive. But Echo was never about moving ships. It was about moving information. A message. He zoomed in on the hologram. It showed a network of brilliant lines connecting points all over the globe, converging on 3 deep installations in the planet's crust. It is a resonant transmitter, the largest ever conceived. It uses the planet itself as a power source and an amplifier. When activated, it will send a single, powerful data pulse. This pulse will travel through subspace. It will reach every inhabited world, every ship, every listening post in the galaxy in a matter of hours. It cannot be blocked or stopped. It is designed to be the loudest shout in history. An older man, the representative from what was left of Europe, leaned forward. A shout of what? A declaration of war? A curse? No, Ji-hoon said. He looked at Myra, then back at the hologram. A testament. It contains everything. The sum total of our human experience, as best we could record it. Our history, from the first cave paintings to the first steps on Mars. Our science, our art, our literature. Every piece of music we could save. The sound of rain in a forest. A child's laughter. It also contains the truth. He changed the image. Now it showed records logs of every communication with the Concordance. Dates, times, The human pleas for peace, the alien refusals. It shows them, Ji-hoon said, his voice gaining strength, that we tried. We tried so hard. We offered them our open hands, and they saw only weapons. The message ends with a simple statement. The words appeared in the air, first in Korean, then in English. You chose this war. The room was utterly silent. The only sound was the hum of the bunker's machinery. Admiral Hyan spoke, his voice hollow. The power requirement for such a transmission. It is impossible. Our entire global grid couldn't handle a fraction of it. Ji-hoon looked down at his feet for a moment, then back up, meeting the eyes of each person in the room. It uses a different source. The transmitter is linked to the planetary energy taps and to the geothermal stabilizers at the core mantle boundary. A woman from the African Union gasped. The core stabilizers? But those regulate the planetary magnetic field? The heat equilibrium? Yes, Ji-hoon whispered. To power the echo pulse, the system will draw energy directly from the planet's molten core. It will drain it, rapidly. The process will. It will extinguish the dynamo effect. The meaning sank in. Mayra watched as the faces around her turned from hope to a sick, slow horror. You are saying, the European representative said slowly, that to send this message. We will kill the Earth. The Earth will become geologically dead, Ji-hoon confirmed. The words felt like ash in his mouth. The core will cool. The magnetic field will collapse. The atmosphere will slowly be stripped away by solar winds. It will become a gray rock. Like Mars, but faster. The outrage erupted. This is madness. You want us to commit planetary suicide? We cannot be the ones to do this. Myra did not raise her voice. She simply stepped forward into the light of the dying Earth hologram. The room quieted. What other choice do we have? She asked. Her question was not an argument. It was a simple, terrible inquiry. They are in our sky. They are burning our cities. They will not stop until every human is gone or enslaved. They have refused every offer, every plea. They see our existence itself as a mistake. She pointed to the screens on the walls, to the silent, burning world. They are already killing the Earth. They are killing our people. They are erasing us. All Dr. Ji-hoon is proposing is that we control the erasure, that we write our own final words instead of letting them write a lie over our grave. Admiral Hyan looked at the tactical screen. The icon for the Guardian was flashing, surrounded by hostile signals. They will call it a weapon, a final act of spite. Perhaps, Mara said, but it is not. It contains no virus, no weapon schematics. It is only us, our truth, our memory. It is the only thing we have left that is truly ours. I would rather send our story out into the stars and let the galaxy know what happened here than let them turn us into a warning about the dangers of primitives. We will not be their lesson in control. We will be our own story. She looked around the room, at the faces filled with grief, anger, and a dawning, awful resolve. We vote, Myra said. All in favor of authorizing Project Echo and Earth's final message, say yes. She was the first. Yes. A pause. Then a gruff, broken voice. Yes. It was Admiral Hyan. One by one, the voices came. Some were whispers. Some were sobs. But they all came. Yes. 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 Ji-hoon's shoulders slumped. He had built it. He had never wanted to see it used. He nodded, a single sharp movement. I will initiate the sequence from here. The final trigger is with the Guardian. When the last major orbital defense falls, it will begin. Myra walked to the great window that looked not outside, but at a live feed from the surface. It showed a park in Seoul, now empty, the trees swaying in an afternoon breeze. A normal day, ending. She keyed a final global address. Every surviving speaker, every screen would carry it. People of Earth, she said, her voice echoing in the bunker and across the dying world. You have been brave beyond measure. You have shown a galaxy of strangers what compassion and courage look like. They have chosen not to see it. They have chosen fear. So now we choose how our story ends. We choose to be remembered, not as victims, not as a warning, but as a people who lived and loved and spoke the truth until the very last moment. For our children, for our memory, we send our echo into the dark. Goodbye. She ended the transmission. The screens on the walls showed the Concordance fleet descending, like locusts, toward the heart of the world. Activate the protocol, President Mira said, her voice now just a tired whisper. And let them hear us. The Guardian shook like a leaf in a storm. A deafening roar of tearing metal filled the bridge, followed by the sharp smell of ozone and burned plastic. Red emergency lights strobed, painting the crew's faces in flashes of panic and determination. Jun clung to his command chair. The main screen was a chaos of static and flame. One of the Concordance fighter vessels, sleek and deadly, had slipped through their defensive fire. Its energy beams had carved a deep wound along the Guardian's port side. Hull breach on decks 4 through 6. Hyen shouted over the alarm. Automatic seals are engaged. We've lost primary power to the forward thrusters. Understood, John said, his voice a forced calm. He checked the tactical display. Around them, the other ships of the last fleet were dying. One by one, their signals vanished, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a quick, sad blink of light going out forever. They were buying seconds with their lives. On the screen, the blue curve of Earth was marred by ugly, spreading blotches of gray and orange where the orbital strikes had hit. No more cities burned. The Concordance had moved past that. Now their larger ships were methodically targeting the last planetary defense installations, the great surface-based laser arrays and missile silos. Each one destroyed was another step toward the end. The Valiant is gone, Suman reported, her voice cracking. She wiped a trickle of blood from a cut above her eye, her hands trembling. The console in front of her was spitting sparks, but she kept working, her fingers flying over the less damaged secondary controls. June saw it on his display. The Valiant had been their sister ship, commanded by an old friend. Its icon simply dissolved. He felt a cold hollow open in his chest. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. There was no time for grief, only duty. Status of the protocol? John asked, turning to Suman. She nodded, swallowing hard. Final broadcast sequence is loaded and ready on my terminal. It's linked to the planetary network. I'm reading a massive energy buildup from the Earth installations Dr. Ji-Hoon talked about. It's like the whole planet is a battery, charging up. Another impact rocked the ship. This one was smaller, but a console near the back of the bridge exploded in a shower of sparks. 2 crew members cried out, but the medical officer was already there, pulling them to safety. Captain! Hyen yelled. 2 Concordance cruisers are breaking off from the main bombardment group. They're on an intercept course. Weapons are hot. They're targeting us specifically. Of course they were. Jun thought. They had seen the Guardian holding its position while other ships died around it. They were clever. They knew a command ship when they saw one. They knew where the nerve center was. Evasive pattern Delta, Jun ordered. Focus all remaining power on rear shields. Do not return fire, sir. Hyen looked at him, confusion and frustration on his face. We can at least try to. Our orders are to hold position and ensure the broadcast, Jun said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We are not here to fight them. We are here to be a lighthouse. And a lighthouse stands, even in the storm." The Guardian shuddered as it tried to maneuver, its damaged engines groaning in protest. The two alien cruisers grew larger on the screen. They were beautiful in a terrible way, their surfaces gleaming like black ice. They did not hurry. They moved with the certainty of predators who know their prey is cornered. A beam of brilliant green energy lanced out from the lead cruiser. It struck the Guardian's weakened rear shields. The ship screamed around them. Lights flickered and died. The low hum of the life support system stuttered. Shields at 8%. Hyen called out, "One more hit like that, and they're gone. Hull integrity won't matter." Jung looked at Earth. He thought of Admiral Mira in her bunker, of Dr. Ji-hoon and his terrible machine. He thought of the parks, the mountains, the billions of stories about to end. His hand went to a small old photograph stuck to the side of his console, a picture of his parents, standing in front of their small home in Busan, smiling. They were gone now, lost in the first strikes. "Suman," he said, his voice suddenly very quiet, "is the link to the planetary system still stable?" She checked, her fingers racing. "Yes, Captain. The link is holding. The energy buildup it's peaking. It's ready. It just needs the final signal from us." The main communication screen flickered to life. The silver face of Envoy Kale appeared. He stood on the pristine bridge of his cruiser, untouched by smoke or fear. "Captain Jun," Kale's translated voice came through, calm and empty. "Your resistance is illogical. Your fleet is destroyed. Your planet is defenseless. Order your crew to stand down and surrender your vessel. Your species may yet be preserved in some form. This is the final offer." Jun stared at the alien. He felt no anger now, only a deep, bottomless pity. This creature, for all its power, would never understand what it was destroying. It would never know what it meant to love a place, a people, a memory. "You are wrong, Envoy Kale," June said, his words slow and clear. "We are not illogical. We are saying goodbye, and we want to make sure someone in this empty, silent galaxy hears it." Kale's head tilted slightly. It was the only sign of confusion. "A farewell is a waste of energy. Surrender." "No," Jun said. He turned his chair away from the screen, facing Suman. Her eyes were wide, full of tears, but her hand was steady over the glowing red initiation panel. "Do it," Jun said. On the screen, Kale raised a hand, about to give the order to fire. Suman slammed her palm down on the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low, subsonic groan seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space. It came not from the ship, but from the planet below dot on Earth. At the 3 deep installation points, the machinery built by Ji-hoon and thousands of others reached its crescendo. It tapped into the heart of the world, into the churning, molten iron of the core. It drew that immense geological power not for destruction, but for a voice. A pulse began dot. It was not light. It was not sound. It was a ripple in the substrate of reality itself, a resonant wave of pure data. It started as a single point and expanded faster than light, a perfect spherical shell of information, exploding outward from the solar system. On the bridge of the Guardian, the only visible sign was on Suman's console. A single bar of light traveled from Earth to transmission. It reached the end. Then, every screen, every monitor, every active system on the ship and across the dying fleet, and in the bunker below Seoul, displayed the same 2 words for a single. Frozen second. Message sent. Outside, the effect on the Concordance ships was immediate and confusing. The wave passed through them like a ghost. No systems failed. No shields flickered. No weapons discharged. It was harmless. It was nothing. But on the lead cruiser, Cale staggered. His ship's sensors were infinitely more advanced than humanity's. They didn't just detect the pulse. They were flooded by it. For a nanosecond, his vessel's computers were overwhelmed by the sheer, staggering volume of data terabytes of information streaming into its buffers. Images of sunsets, equations for physics, the sound of a violin, the words of a peace treaty, a child's drawing. Then it was over. The pulse was gone, racing toward the stars. Cale looked at his own screens, now returning to normal. He looked at the crippled human ship, still holding its place. He felt a strange, unfamiliar sensation. It was the first prickling of doubt. On the Guardian, Jun watched as the two cruisers hung in space, their weapons still glowing but silent. They were not firing. What? What's happening? Hyan whispered. Jun looked at the Earth, and he saw it. The planet didn't explode. It didn't shatter. But as he watched, a visible wave of gray seemed to spread from the points of the installations. It was not a cloud. It was the color dying. The vibrant blues and greens and whites swirled and muted, fading into a dull, uniform ash gray. The lights of the cities, already few, winked out completely. The planet, in the span of a minute, turned from a living jewel into a dead stone. The core was cold. The heart had stopped. Earth was silent. The war was over. Jun unstrapped himself from his chair. His legs felt weak. He walked to the main viewport and placed a hand against the cold, transparent material. He looked at the gray world that had been his home. They heard us, Suin said softly, crying without sound. The whole galaxy just heard us. Jun nodded, his own tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. He didn't know if it would matter. He didn't know what came next. But the message, their final, shouted truth, was flying into the darkness. Their story was no longer theirs alone. Yuna was running down a narrow, dimly lit corridor in the asteroid colony of New Haven. The air was stale and smelled of recycled water and fear. In her arms, she carried a small data drive, the last records from the agricultural sector. The alarms had been blaring for an hour. The Concordance had found them. The last human refuge outside the solar system was about to fall. She skidded into the crowded comm center. People were huddled around screens, their faces lit by static and despair. What's happening? She gasped, pushing her way to the front. They're jamming everything, a technician said, his voice hollow. No signals in or out. We're blind. The fleet? I think the fleet is gone. A collective sob went through the room. New Haven's few defensive ships were no match for even a single Concordance patrol vessel. They had hidden for years. It was over. Yuna leaned against a cold metal wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. She closed her eyes, thinking of her brother. He had been on Earth. There had been no word for weeks. She hugged her knees, waiting for the end. Then, every screen in the room and across the entire asteroid colony went pure, brilliant white. A collective flinch swept through the comm center. The white faded, replaced not by the expected image of a Concordance commander, but by a simple, clear starfield. A familiar, gentle voice filled the air, speaking in Korean. It was President Mira. Yuna's breath caught. "People of the galaxy," the voice began. And as it spoke, subtitles scrolled in 100 different alien scripts. "You are receiving this because you chose not to listen. Now you will hear." What followed was not a speech. It was an experience. The screens became a window into a lost world. They saw rolling green hills under a yellow sun. They saw vast, blue oceans with strange, leaping creatures. They saw cities, not of cold metal, but of stone and glass and light, teeming with life in impossible variety. They heard the noise, the chatter, the music, the distant hum of machinery that sounded like a song dot. Then came the history. It was fast, a river of images. Humans in animal skins making fire. Humans building great stone pyramids. Humans scribbling on paper, painting on canvas, looking through telescopes. They saw wars, yes, brutal and terrible, but they saw the aftermath too. Humans in rubble, helping each other. Humans signing treaties. Humans building hospitals. Yuna watched, tears streaming down her face. She saw the first shaky steps on the moon, heard the crackly, joyous voice say, "That's one small step." She saw children in classrooms laughing. She saw families sharing meals. She saw old people holding hands in a park. It was a portrait of a species that was messy and violent and beautiful and kind. Then the record turned to the concordance. It showed the first contact, the human delegations with their gifts and hopeful faces. It played every transmission, every plea for peace, every offer of cooperation. And it played the cold, dismissive replies from Envoy Kale and others. You are a problem. Your existence is instability. Surrender or be removed. The contrast was devastating. On one side, a chaotic, vibrant, pleading life. On the other, a cold, sterile, absolute judgment. The final images were the hardest to watch. They were from the war. Not from military feeds, but from civilians. A child's view of the sky filling with strange ships. A shaky shot from a roof in Seoul as the first plasma strikes hit the mountains. The silent, terrible flashes in space as human ships died. The recording did not look away. Finally, the image settled on Earth from space. It was still blue, still alive. The voice of Mira returned, calm and final. You saw our hands were open. You chose to see only weapons. You heard our words of peace. You chose to hear only threats. You had a galaxy of choices. You chose this war. So we choose our end. We choose to be remembered not as you named us, but as we were. This is our story. This was Earth. The transmission ended. Not with a dramatic finish, but with a simple, awful cut to black dot in the silence of the comm center on New Haven. No one moved. Then, Yuna saw it. On the main screen, which was now linked to an external telescope feed, a new image appeared. It was the solar system. And Earth, the beautiful blue marble, was changing. The color was leaching away, like life draining from a face. It turned gray, and a dead charcoal black. It was no longer a world. It was a grave. Yuna put her hand over her mouth to stifle a cry. It was one thing to fear it. It was another to see it happen. Across the galaxy, similar scenes unfolded. On the verdant hive world of the Trell, a species of plant-like philosophers, the hive vines convened. They had voted for the concordance action, believing the humans were a dangerous infection. Now, they watched the humans' final message. They saw the forests, the care for growing things, the poetry about nature. One ancient Trell, its fronds trembling, spoke. We voted to prune a weed. They have shown us we burned a library. A living library. On the harsh, mineral-rich colonies of the Caver, a warrior species, the clan leaders watched the human wars. They saw the tactics, the courage of the last fleet holding its line. They saw the humans choose to send a message instead of a final, spiteful bomb. A grizzled Caver commander grunted, slamming a fist on the table. They fought with honor to the last breath. And their last breath was truth. The Concordance leaders are cowards. They fear truth more than battle. On the Concordance flagship itself, now hanging in the silent space above a dead Earth, chaos reigned. Envoy Kale stood on his bridge, but he was no longer in command. The message had blasted through their systems. Every crew member, from the lowest technician to the highest officer, had seen it. They had seen the lies of omission their leaders had told them. They had been told humans were mindless, expansionist vermin. They had not been shown the art. They had not been shown the peaceful settlements on Mars. They had not been shown the desperate, repeated pleas. A junior officer, her silver skin flushed with the color of shame, turned from her console. Envoy, we are receiving thousands of queries from member worlds. The Trell are withdrawing from the Concordance. The Kyver are denouncing us. The Gibbous Assembly is demanding an immediate council for war crimes investigation. Kale did not answer. He was staring at the gray planet on the main screen. He had believed with absolute certainty in the logic of stability. He had seen the equations. A fast-rising species always caused chaos. Removal was the only logical solution, but logic did not account for the sound of a human child laughing. It did not account for the look in Captain Chun's eyes, not hatred, but pity. It did not account for a species that would choose to tell its story as it died, rather than lash out. He had thought they were silencing a noise. They had, instead, given a whisper the power of a supernova. A new signal appeared on his screen, direct summons from the Concordance High Council. Their faces, usually so composed, were etched with panic and fury. "Kale," the head counselor screeched. "What have you done? The Alliance is fracturing. They are calling us the monsters." Kale finally spoke, his voice flat. "We did not show them the child's laughter, Counselor. We only showed them the potential of the child's weapon. We chose the war. They just showed everyone what that choice meant." He turned off the communication. Around him, his crew avoided his gaze. The grand, logical, peaceful concordance was crumbling, not from outside force, but from an inside truth it could no longer suppress. Back on New Haven, Una was still on the floor. The technician turned to her, his face pale. "The jamming, it stopped. And we're getting a new signal. It's not human." A new face appeared on the screen. It was a Trell, its woody features soft with what looked like sorrow. Remnant of humanity, its translated voice whispered like wind through leaves. "We saw. We are. So deeply sorry. We are coming. We will offer you shelter. We will help." One by one, other signals chimed in. Not from the Concordance. From individual species, from rebel factions, from ordinary people across the galaxy who had seen the message. They were not reaching out to a powerful new ally. They were reaching out to a survivor of a tragedy they had all allowed to happen. Una looked at the gray dot that was Earth on the screen, then at the faces of the aliens offering help. The war was over. Earth was gone. But the message was just beginning its work. The galaxy was waking up, and it was weeping. Jun stood at the viewport of the ship that had come to rescue him all those years ago. It was not a human ship. It was a Kyver vessel, all sharp angles and hammered metal. Named Stone's Truth, the Kyver commander had pulled Chun's life pod from the wreckage of the Guardian as the Concordance fleet retreated in disarray. He had not said much, just grunted. You stood. You spoke. We listen. Now Jun was going back. The ship slipped out of warp space. The sun, their sun, was still there, a steady yellow point of light. And there, in its orbit, was Earth. It was not the Earth he remembered. The blue was gone. The white swirls of clouds were gone. It was a gray sphere, like a lump of dull charcoal. It had no sparkle, no life. It was just as a rock. Seeing it was a physical pain, a punch in the chest that never got easier. We are in orbit. Human Jun, the Kyver pilot rasped. Jun nodded. Thank you. Outside the viewport, the space around Earth was not empty. It was filled with ships. Not warships, but vessels of every shape and size imaginable. Sleek Trell seed ships that looked like drifting leaves, blocky gibbous freighters, swift caver patrol vessels. And at the center, holding a position of honor where the Guardian had made its last stand, was a new space station. It was built in a ring, a circle around nothing. They called it the Memorial Ring. Took a small shuttle from the stone's truth to the ring. The docking bay was quiet, filled with beings from a dozen species. They moved quietly, respectfully. He saw a group of Trell gently touching a wall display that showed an image of an earth forest. He saw a young caver warrior, his head bowed before a statue. In the center of the ring was a garden. It was the impossible, beautiful thing. Plants from across the galaxy grew together under a simulated sun. But at its very heart was a plot of earth soil, saved from 1,000 different places before the end. In it grew simple grass and a single stubborn cherry tree sapling, tended by a quiet android. A plaque there read, in many languages, "From the soil, memory. From memory, hope." Jun walked through the garden to the main chamber. It was a vast, silent hall. The only light came from the gray planet below, visible through a great transparent dome. And in the center of the room, on a simple pedestal, was a stone. It was not a fancy stone. It was a piece of gray basalt, taken from the shores of what was once Korea. Carved into its surface, in deep, clear letters, was Earth's final message. The words were repeated in a spiral of languages, flowing out from the Central Korean script. "You chose this war. Jun was not alone." A figure stood before the stone, its silver skin seeming to absorb the dim light. It was Kale. He wore no uniform, no symbols of rank. He was just a visitor. "Captain Jun," Kale said, not turning around. His translated voice was quieter, stripped of its old certainty. "They told me you come here often," Jun said, stopping a few feet away. "I do. My people have relocated me. I am a reminder of the failure. I study it." Kale finally looked at Jun. His black eyes were unreadable, but the proud stiffness was gone from his posture. "I have watched your message 10,000 times. I have studied every artifact here. The child's drawing, the music called symphony. I am trying to understand the thing we destroyed." "And do you?" Jun asked. There was no anger in his voice. The anger had burned out years ago, leaving only a quiet, permanent sadness. "I understand that we saw a number rising on a graph and called it a threat," Kale said slowly. "You saw a child and called it a future. The logic was correct. The understanding was bankrupt." He gestured to the gray world below. "We were the chaos. We were the destroyers of stability. The concordance is gone because of that truth." Jun nodded. He had heard. The Great Alliance had shattered under the weight of its own shame. In its place was something new, fragile, and slow, a loose coalition that called itself the Listening Council. Its first law was the right of testament, the right of any species to tell its story. Unchallenged, "They are ready for you in the chamber," Kale said. Jun left the alien standing before the stone and walked into an adjoining room. It was a simple amphitheater. The seats were filled, not with humans, there were so few of them left, scattered on refugee worlds and colonies, like New Haven, but with representatives of the galaxy. Trell, Caver, Gibbous, and others. And in the front row, Una. She had become a voice for the human remnants. She met his eyes and gave a small, strong smile. At the center was a podium. Jun walked to it. He looked out at the faces, so strange and different. He saw curiosity. He saw a deep, lingering shame. He saw a desperate need to hear what he would say. He did not use a screen or notes. He just spoke. "You asked me here to speak about the war," Jun began, his voice echoing in the quiet. "But the war is not the important part. You already know about the war. You saw it. He paused, looking at the gray earth below them, visible through a side window. You asked me to tell you what we lost. I could talk for years and not finish. The taste of a peach from my grandmother's tree. The way the wind smells before rain in the mountains. The sound of a city at night. Not a machine sound, but the hum of millions of people living. That is all gone. He saw many of them lower their heads. But our message was not a list of losses, Jun continued. It was an invitation. We forced you to look. You did not want to look at us when we were alive. So we made you look at what you did when we were gone. He placed his hands on the podium. You thought our end was a warning. A warning to not rise too fast, to not challenge the old powers. It was not. It was an invitation to see, to listen, to choose better. He turned and pointed directly at the stone in the next room, at the words carved there. You chose this war. It is not an accusation. Not anymore. It is a question. It is a question for every new species you meet, for every conflict you face. What will you choose? Will you choose fear and graphs and cold logic that ends in gray stone? Or will you choose to see the child's laughter? Will you choose the messy, beautiful, terrifying reality of another living, feeling people? The room was utterly silent. Do not build monuments to your guilt, Jun said, his voice softening. Build a future on our lesson. Listen, really listen. That is all we ever wanted. That is the only thing that can honor the gray world below us. Choose better. He stepped back. For a moment, there was no sound. Then, a Trell representative rose. It did not clap, as humans did. Instead, it rustled its fronds in a slow, respectful wave, a sign of deep contemplation and respect. All through the chamber, others followed a caver, pounding a fist softly over his heart, a gibbous flashing its bioluminescent spots in a pattern of acknowledgement. Chun left the podium. Yuna came to him and took his arm. Together, they walked back out into the memorial ring's garden. They stood looking at the sliver of real earth, at the tiny green sapling fighting to grow in a box of stolen soil. Below them, the gray earth turned silently in the void. It was a tombstone for a world. But above it, the space was full of light, the running lights of 100 different ships from 100 different species, living in a fragile, careful peace.